Thank you for clapping for me. Hey, I've got a great job. I'm about to introduce the next spouse of the next President of the United States. And what a spouse. I know I'm just a warm-up act. And now I know how warm-up acts feel. But before the main act comes up, and before I introduce the next spouse of the President of the United States, let me just tell you also why I'm really honored to be up here and speak about why I so strongly believe the next President of the United States needs to be Senator Hillary Clinton. Now, many of you know that I worked in the White House for the next spouse of the next President of the United States. And when I was there, I got to know Senator Clinton a bit. I was Director for Defense Policy, and I can remember several times having her assistance. I remember Admiral Bud Zumwalt, member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that made the decision to use Agent Orange in Vietnam. And his son died about 10 years or so later, a Marine Corps captain of Agent Orange, who would come to the White House incessantly, consistently, and meet with the President, but more with Mrs. Clinton. And today, Agent Orange is finally recognized, because of her and other efforts, as a disease with the benefits of it. And today there is a Women's Veterans Cemetery, it's a memorial in Arlington Cemetery, because Mrs. Clinton would consistently meet with the groups and come together. If you're a vet, that's your woman. Number one, in my mind, I'm for Senator Clinton because she cares about those who wear the cloth of this nation and everyone. Number two, ratchet ahead about 8 to 9 years later, and to show you the Navy has a sense of humor, they finally made me an admiral. And so there I am testifying before her on the Senate Armed Services Committee. She's a member. And it merely had to do with helicopter procurement. But at the end of that testimony, she said, "Admiral, I've got a question for you. What do you think, as a naval officer, about an emerging China? As a maritime power, when our nation is the maritime power with interest around the world." And so then you read her foreign policy article just last fall, where she states the most important bilateral relationship we have in this century is China. Number one, she cares, but she has vision. And number three, and I've got to tell one more vignette if it's all right, Mr. President. Mr. Spouse, I forgot that. But then, right after the election, I had been invited by a kind gentleman to speak up in New York City about 3 days after the election, a few days after the election, a Sunday. The President spoke that day to Walter Shorenstein events. Mrs. Clinton was there. And on the way back, leaving, she asked my wife and I, he's going back, and said, "We're taking a train." She said, "Oh, come on back with me." And being low on campaign funds after the election, I said, "Sure, a free ride." But I remembered always this. As we sat down, she picked up her cell phone, Mrs. Clinton, made a call, and then put it back down. She turned and said, "Excuse me for making that call, but there was a precinct, as well as several others, that was heavily Republican. But I spent a lot of time in that precinct getting to know them, to understand them, to let them know that we could work. I went into the firehouses, not just to the banquets. And I didn't win that precinct. So I asked for a recount, and you know what? I just found out I won it." So what does that say to me? I love a captain on the bridge of the ship who has the vision and says, "This is where the ship needs to go." But you know what? You better have a captain of that ship who understands where the boiler room is, can put the piping back together to get the ship underway, because they understand process, hard, gritty work process. Because the USS Washington, D.C. is aground. And I can tell you I'm there. And do I want someone with a vision? You bet I do. But I need someone who can understand the process of day one and can get that ship underway to follow a vision. She cares, she has vision, and she understands what to do. And that is why I support this vision. I need a partner at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue who can get us underway immediately. So now I turn to someone who will speak much more eloquently than I can. He knows her a bit better than I do, but if I could, I had some of the best years of my life working for you, sir, in the White House. I could tell you stories that are savory enough to tell my daughter, but I'll never forget the first day, having been there only 3 days in the White House. And I was told that to give him a briefing. I walked in, and the only person there was the National Security Advisor behind me. I was in a uniform and walked in that day in the Oval Office. I was calm as a cucumber. And I walked in, and he was sitting behind the desk. He looked up, and I had my uniform on. He came around the desk, and he walked all the way across the room and said, "Captain, it's good to have you aboard." I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the time he came right after the election to our reception down there in Washington, D.C. But more than that, sitting in my 6-year-old's room is a card. After my daughter had sent him a Valentine's Day card, it says, "Dear Alex, thank you for the Valentine's Day card. It's the best one I got this year." I got to tell you, Mrs. Clinton is very fortunate. But you know, Mr. President, you're very fortunate to have her, and we need Mrs. Clinton. Thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, I think you can tell by that presentation how lucky you are to have Joe Sestak representing you in Congress. And his friendship and support to Hillary have meant the world to her and to me. I will never forget it. I'd also like to thank Senator Connie Williams for being here, the Mayor of Lansdowne, Jane Young, thank you, Marcel Groen, the Montgomery County Democratic Chair, and all the people from Penn State Brandywine that made us feel welcome. Now, I want to tell you, it's a rainy day.